And welcome back for another episode of the CBSI Hot 10 show. Make sure you go over to comicbookinvest.com and check out the article where I may put a few little extra bits of details and tidbits that I don't cover here on the show tonight. Also, make sure you check out all the shows we do have here on the channel. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And before we get into it, just want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day and remind any of you that haven't tried Whatnot yet that you can use my link below and get yourselves a free $15 on your first purchase by signing up and giving it a try. You can spend it with whomever you want, on whatever you want. No strings attached. You just try out the application and you get a free $15 to do so there. I'm bringing this up again because I will be going back to the platform for a sale in a couple of weeks. So keep your eyes out for that. More to announce soon on that front. But for now, we'll leave it at that. So give it a look if you haven't tried it before. But if you're just here for the Hot 10 show, don't worry. I'm going to start it up right after this short break.
Notable sales.
And with our first notable sale, we have this second print, first appearance of Flash Thompson as Venom. This thing, I had completely forgotten about this book. I hadn't been thinking about this thing in ages, but some people out there have been. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 654. Like I said, this is the second print cover that shows the Venom. It shows Flash Thompson, who, they end up joining up at the end of this thing. But all-time high set here with a CGC 9.8 selling for a best offer of $3,100. $3,100 for this second print. Again, to put this into context, the last 9.8 that sold was back in October of just last year, and it was only $600. $602 to now $3,100. I don't know. That's a significant increase and something that stood out to me, so I figured it was worth noting this week for a notable sale. Now, that's not the other kind of crazy outlier I spotted this week. The other book that I want to talk about here is an error. This is a book you don't see all that often. It is a silver foil error for Wolverine, number 145. I know you guys remember this one way back in the day. This particular sale here is for a green label. This is a green label 9.6 that got a significant price on it. As I mentioned, no foil here, though it is supposed to be the foil edition, so it is an error print. It is noted on the slab itself, Wolverine 145. This thing sold for $8,900 this week on a best offer. $8,900. This after only 2 weeks ago, thereabouts, on the 24th of January, a 9.8 of this same error, another green label like this one, sold for about the same price at about $8,900, almost $9,000. What's crazy about this, and what I think is worth mentioning and noting, is that there was a blue label 9.6 with the same error. They just didn't call it out. They didn't put it on a green label, but the book itself inside the slab was missing the foil. That thing sold for only like $100. So if somebody had that or made that purchase, they can resubmit and look at the prices this thing is getting now. That's all I'm saying. You just got to be careful and keep an eye on those things because it is something that's easily, slip past the goalie. They might not have called it out on the original blue label slab. I had that happen to me once where I submitted, it was Dark Metal 2. If you guys remember that event from DC, issue 2, I got a perfect copy that had no foil on it. Sent it into CGC to get it slabbed with the notation of no foil. They didn't bother noting it. They just gave it a 9.8 and didn't even note that the foil was missing. I ended up selling the book anyway, but didn't get no green label, didn't get any call out for the error, but it was an error edition. It's just, it happens. Now, with all that said, we're going to get into the top 10, but before we do, I want to remind all of you out there, if you're in the market to buy some supplies, bags, boards, long boxes, short boxes, top loaders, whatever you need to keep your comics and collectibles safe. If you're going to go over to BCW, you can use the link down in the description below, but definitely use my code RENA10 to save yourself 10% off your entire order. Because you got to buy these supplies anyway, you might as well save money while you do it. So use that code to save yourself 10% off your whole order, RENA10, and, because it doesn't hurt. You got to spend it, so you might as well save some money while you're doing it. And with that all said, we can get into it and get right into the list starting now.
Number 10.
All right, our first book is back on the list again from last week. Yes, we are talking again about Earth X number 12. This is Shalabal as the Silver Surfer. This movie is still on the way. The trailer was a hit last week, got a lot of people buying books last week, and they're still buying them this week. Awesome Alex Ross cover here on this issue 12. Up a bit in volume. I mean, pretty close, but overall 60%. Still with about 24 sales thereabouts, averaging about $35 this week. So it's up slightly from last week, where I think the mark was around 30, and highs hitting 50, where I think last week we might only had highs of 40. So price wise, it's not up a ton. It's only up a hair, but volume wise, it's up a decent chunk with that 60% increase from last week. So it still earns a spot on the list, albeit on the bottom at number 10. And with that said, let's keep this thing rolling and get into our next book.
Number 9.
Back on the list after a few weeks off, we have one of those Marvel Rival variants. Out of the pack of 5 that we've had, this one seems to be standing out from the group as far as prices go. Volumes are not that high, but this Magic number 1, the Rivals edition that gives you kind of the design for the character in the video game. This thing, albeit only having about a dozen sales or so, the price is creeping up with averages now around $35, hitting highs of 50. Also noting that if you wanted to buy a copy, I was looking at what's available. Right now, the lowest available is in that $40 range. So they're looking for $40 to $50 now on this book. So out of last week, could be had for $25 like the rest. $20 to $25 is the mark for most of these Rivals variants. But this one, this past week, has decided to pull ahead of the pack and earn itself a spot here at number 9 on the list. Now, with that said, let's keep it going and get on to number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8, we have another book that is quietly creeping up despite not having a ton of volume of sales. Around a dozen sales on this book, too. We are talking about Mark Spears' Monsters number 2. Not the number 1. This is number 2, in particular, the cover A. I think it's Guess Who's Back or Dracula. How it's listed a number of different ways, so it could be tough to kind of identify that way, but it's the one with Drac coming out of the grave. Cover A, the first cover A. Again, only about a dozen sales, but last week this thing was only like $30. This week it's averaging $42 with a high sale of $60 just yesterday. I had to change the high mark because as I did the list originally, the high mark was 50, and then we had a $60 sale. So the prices are going up again, as this was only $30 last week. So something to keep an eye on. Again, not with a ton of volume, but the price increase earns a spot here at the bottom of the list and is worth noting and worth keeping an eye on going forward. And with that all said, we still got more lists to go, so let's get into it with lucky number 7.
Number 7.
Here's another book to keep an eye on. Invincible is back. Season 3 is airing now on Amazon Prime. And while there are a few books that are moving, this one in particular over the last week has really made some gains as far as price goes. This is issue 61, covered by Ryan Otley. This is the first appearance of Conquest, a villain that a lot of folks are banking on showing up here, possibly at the end of this 3rd season of the show. Big doings coming for those of you who know the series, so keep an eye on Conquest. This book, again, with not a ton of volume, but it's about a dozen sales like the last couple of books, but it's now averaging $80 and hit a high of $160 raw. Meanwhile, last week, copies sold for as little as $20. So keep that in mind. Last week, couple of copies, $20. Yes, there were some $50, $60 sales mixed in as well. But this week, the average is now $80, and the high sale was $160. And a 9.8 also sold for $285. So again, there's a lot of excitement and a lot of people looking forward to this character possibly showing up on screens as soon as the end of this season. We don't know for sure. Nothing's been announced, but that seems to be the play that a lot of people are making, and they are throwing a lot of dollars at it to do so. Now, with that said, let's keep it going and see what we got next.
Number 6.
Out officially today, we have Captain America. So this is Sam Wilson as Captain America, first in issue 25. I know there's a lot of other books we could talk about here, but this is the book that most people pick up when they want to grab that Sam Wilson as Captain America. Now, Captain America 25 has been out a while. This is a Stuart Immonen cover. The last couple of weeks, this has been selling very well. Basically, selling about 40 copies a week, a little bit more than that, both weeks, this week and last week as well. Prices around the same kind of mark in that kind of $10 to $15 range, hitting highs at $20 raw. Not an expensive book, but the volumes have been there. Whereas just 2 weeks ago, there's only like 8 copies. So as we got closer to release, volume started picking up as people started gravitating back towards this book before the movie drops, which was today. Have you seen it yet? I haven't, but I'm going to go this weekend because I heard it is actually pretty good. And with that said, 9/8 are only $125 right now. Who knows where that goes from here, but here we are at number 6, and let's keep the list rolling from here and get to number 5.
Number 5.
Speaking of Captain America, a character appearing inside that movie is this one here, Sabra. From what I've read, again, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I read little bits of notes that they might have changed her character around a little bit, but albeit it doesn't change too much to make it, not her. So her first appearance here in Incredible Hulk number 256 did see a nice bump the past week, going up 200% in sales, with about 20 sales because, we only had like 10 last week and then we sold a little over 20 this week. So a decent jump in volume there with averages around $25, even hitting a high of $60 raw. But the thing that really stood out to me was that CGC 9.8 that sold for $550. That's a pretty big number for this book, to me, considering what the raw copies are selling for. So, hey, everybody take a shot and get your copy graded if you can. And with that said, we've got 4 more books left, so let's see what they are.
Number 4.
More rumors and speculation that we could be seeing Little Franklin showing up soon. That's part of it. This book is also important for another reason, as this is also the first appearance of Annihilus. This is Fantastic Four Annual number 6, Jack Kirby cover. Classic stuff here. First appearance of Franklin Richards and Annihilus in this book, so you get 2 bites at the apple. Whether it be that you're banking on the fact that Franklin Richards is going to show up in Fantastic Four First Steps this summer, or you're going to wait it out and see if Annihilus is the big bad in the Nova series coming to Disney Plus. Who knows? Either way, this is a good book. This is a classic book, classic first, and it is moving pretty well this week with a couple dozen sales here, up 80% from last week as far as volumes go. Prices are all over the place because of the grading here. We're talking about copies that could be very low grade to high grade, so it's not apples to apples comparison. This isn't like a modern book where we're just assume everything is near mint when we're pricing it. Here we're talking about very good copies in that kind of like 2.5 to 3.5 kind of range, selling raw for $100, $125. Meanwhile, 7.0s are in that $300 range because a couple of copies sold at that grade this week for $300. So price-wise, it really depends on the grade, but it's the volumes that bring it up here on the list at number 4, as this is an older book that we don't see sell in volume that often. And an 80% jump is worth noting and something to keep an eye on going forward. Now, with that said, we still got our top 3 left. So,
Number 3.
Man, the book that just won't go away. It is back yet again. Hulk number 1 from 2008. You guys know this one. This was the hot book of all of last year as it kept coming back and onto the list, back and forth here and there as we kept getting closer and closer to the release of Captain America 4. So, movie's out today. Red Hulk's here. Tell me what you think if you saw the movie in the comments down below. But Red Hulk here on the cover of this issue 1. We're not going to get into the whole details that he doesn't actually show up in the story of this book because he doesn't. He doesn't show up until issue 2, I believe. But he's right there on the cover. So a lot of folks like this book, and it still sells well anytime we get Red Hulk business or news moving forward. So this one keeps coming back and doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, as we got it at number 3 with 50+ sales this past week, which is up 28%, a decent amount. Last week, it had about 40 sales or so, and we're still looking at averages around 60, highs of 75 for raw books. That's not the all-time high for this book in any way, but it's higher than where it's been of late as people are getting excited again for that movie, which is out now. The big number that kind of stood out to me was that newsstand. So a CGC 9.8 newsstand sold for $885 this week, while direct editions of that same book in 9.8 only go for about $300. So if you got a newsie, it's worth quite a bit more than your regular direct edition. So take a look at that too while you're at it. And with that said, we still got 2 books left. So let's take a look and see what they are.
Number 2.
Well, Coming in at number 2, thanks to that Super Bowl trailer of Thunderbolts, we have The Sentry, number 1. Again, this is another book that's been up and down, back and forth on this list multiple times here and there as we get more news and appearances, etc. We've seen a quick little image of Bob there in the trailer. We also saw some hints at the Void being a possible villain and him being the villain of this film. We still don't know a lot about it, even after the trailer, but that seems to be what the storyline might be based off of. So keep an eye on that, as this is the first appearance of the Sentry as well as the Void. And you get both in this issue because they're both, well, not to spoil it, I mean, this book is over 25 years old now. They're both the same person. But with that said, 30-plus sales this week. It's up almost 300% from last week because there was only a handful of sales there, averaging about $80, back up to highs of $100 again. Black cover, I know people will tell you it's hard to get a 9.8 in a black cover, but it is what it is. 9.8's looking at $275, which is still a decent amount for this book. It's just the volumes are there as more folks are getting excited as we get some more looks at this film. Thunderbolts coming out this upcoming May. Will the rest of the Thunderbolts first appearances follow suit? So far, not yet, but who knows? Maybe we'll be looking at those on the outside looking in. But for now, Sentry number 1 is standing out from the pack, and a decent jump in volume, as you can see there at almost 300%, puts it at number 2 on our list this week, which leaves only one book left for us to talk about. So let's just get right to it.
And our number 1.
All right, our number 1 book this week, yes, I'm calling it Fantastic Four number 49. And I have a good reason to do so because this book is selling very well of late. We may not be talking about volume. Volume may be close to the same as it was last week, but prices are up significantly. Now, Fantastic Four number 49, first full appearance of Galactus, cover appearance of Galactus and Surfer there. Yes, I even looked at 48. 48's doing all right, but just didn't seem to have enough of a price increase or a volume increase to make him spot here on the list. But this book here, it did. Now, we still had over 20 sales, so we still had about a couple dozen sales like we did last week. That's not what stands out about this book. If you guys remember when I had this on the list last week at number 3, the average, overall average, raw, graded, everything being sold for this particular book in first print, no foreign reprints, no facsimiles, nothing like that. Average was only around like $300-something overall for those couple dozen copies. This week, the average is $880, so more than doubling in price across the board. Higher grade copies and more expensive copies are selling, which is why I'm putting this book here, because that's something you don't see all the time. A raw sold for $1,250 this week. Decent looking raw copy, by the way, but $1,200 is a big number for this book. PGX 9.0 even sold for $3,800 this week. I know it's a PGX, but still $3,800 is a big number. A CGC 8.5 sold for $2,350. Mind you, last week I think the highest high sale was 7.0 or 7.5s were like $1,500, and I think a 7.5 sold this week for $1,700. So again, we're seeing increases not only in the copies from last week in the same grade, but just higher grade and more expensive copies in general moving. Because I mean, out of all books last week, there were only 4 that sold for over $1,000. This week it was like 7 or 8 that were over $1,000 sales. You know. Not even all of them graded, because that one raw copy sold for $1,250. Now, if we were talking about a modern book just going from $60 to $100, that would be a huge jump. So why wouldn't I hold the same book accountable here in a classic book? So had to put this one in at number 1 as it just increased in price to a point where I couldn't ignore it. And folks are getting excited. I'm excited. I'm a big Galactus fan. I love Silver Surfer. I can't wait to see this big guy show up on screen. Hopefully it's done well and done right. So far, so good. He is a big guy. It's not a smoke monster like the last time they put him on screen. So kudos to them for going the whole 9 and trying this out, because I'm on board. I'm looking forward to this personally, and I'm not alone. based off a lot of these sales. So with that all said, that is our list this week. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you got any of these books, and let me know if you guys saw Captain America and what you thought, and if we should be looking forward to any other books that we could have seen with little tidbits and little Easter eggs and things like that were popping up in there. But with that said, don't go anywhere. Even though we're done here, stick around for the Qualified, which is starting up right after I'm done. The boys are going to be getting into sketchbooks. I know that's something that a lot of us might not know a lot about. I got a couple. They're pretty cool. If you like art and artists, sketchbooks are an interesting collectible because, yes, they are collectible, and there are some interesting ones out there. So the boys are going to go over it, as well as that outside looking in that I mentioned before, and all their other fun segments. So stick around for that. Otherwise, I will see you all soon with some more content later. All right?